Welcome to the Quantum Healing Oracle. This is a channel dedicated to using reflections from the astrology and tarot to bring forward clarity, guidance, and new perspectives to help you navigate your journey. My name's Pan. If you're new here, please feel free to like and subscribe. And today we're going to do a cosmic update reading. In this reading, I take a look at the current energies and kind of reflect back through what I'm picking up and what I've been experiencing. And then we'll do a tarot reading and dive deeper and see what comes up from there. Please only take what resonates. These are my interpretations of the energies, and nothing is ever set in stone. There's always multiple paths available to you, and it's ultimately up to you to choose the path that works best for you. If you'd like to skip forward to the tarot reading, I'll leave a timestamp in the description box. So this is being recorded, I think it's February 2nd, 2026. All these readings are timeless, so if you come across us at a different time, all these energies are relevant. Everything that is shifting is all happening, and it's happening for different people in different ways. But this was just after the last full moon. And what we had during the last full moon was a really strong energy. It felt like this was also the time of Imbolc, kind of the midway point between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. And this was during this time I felt the first real push or influx of the energies that are coming in 2026. And if they feel very strong of change, they can feel very abrupt at times, very powerful. And so not only did we have the energies around the full moon, the day after we had a flurry of very large solar flares. And so really strong solar activity. I think the biggest one was an X 8.1, which is huge. So this is just showing there's a lot of intensity and energy from the sun, which is essentially source energy. It's our soul's energy pushing through into our system. And whenever we have these strong bursts of solar activity, we can expect to have changes in our consciousness and also experiences changes in the world. So what I want to talk about today is authority. And specifically, I'm going to highlight the difference between external authority and internal authority. Now, we all pretty familiar with what an external authority is. We all grew up with parents, and our parents were in charge of making the decisions for a lot of our lives. And then, of course, we move into our society, and we have governments, and we have police, and we have laws, and there seems to be plenty of reflections of other people that are saying, this is what you need to do. You follow this rule, follow this agreement, follow this idea. That's what external authority is, when it seems like the idea of making the choice of what to do comes from the outside. And conversely, internal authority is when you are making your choice based on what feels right to you, when you're connected to your spirit and when you're expressing what feels like the right thing to do. Okay? And both of these ways of using authority have their place. It's not like one is right and wrong. It's not like that. And a good example is that when we're children, we need a certain amount of external authority. We need the parents to set boundaries while we're maturing. And then as we get to a point where we've matured, they release the external authority. And then, if they did their jobs well, then we start operating from a form of internal authority as we move into the world. And so the external authority is meant to hold a structure during a maturation process. But of course, as we know, the external authority can be out of balance and can end up taking on distorted forms. An easy example of this, and this doesn't happen so much anymore, but 30, 40 years ago, it was common that parents were trying to tell their children what they should do after high school, what they should do with their lives, whether it be go to college or be this kind of person and not that kind of person. And that was an example of when the parents' external authority, while maybe appropriate when the child was younger, was running out of balance as the child gets older, because they start to try to assert that kind of influence when that's not appropriate at that time. Okay, so there's kind of this like understanding of when the external authority is in harmony and balance and it creates a positive structure, versus when the external authority is out of balance and it becomes it becomes disruptive to the free will. Okay, so this is kind of the energy that I'm feeling. This is the way that I experienced it directly through my own life experience, but this is a lot of what I'm feeling is coming into the collective right now, is this question, this this investigation of understanding where that line is when external authority is a healthy structure that's beneficial and when it becomes something that's disruptive or distorted and therefore needs to be shifted. And I think we're seeing this, in large when we look at our economic system, we look at our political system, we look at the military. I mean, this has really been going on for many, many years, but it's just getting to a point where the collective consciousness is fully aware of where that form of external authority has crossed the line and is creating more disruption than it is helpful. And it's largely because, over the past 13,000 years, but mostly in the last 5,000 years, our society, the human collective, has been in a process of maturation. It's been maturing to the point where it's kind of ready to step out on its own and operate from its own internal authority. And I think that's why we're seeing and feeling kind of the shifts in our societal structure the way that we're feeling them, because it's almost a signal that's saying the collective consciousness of humanity is ready to release that structure of external authority and begin operating from a form of internal authority. And so internal authority, when you are connected to yourself, you're connected to your own guidance, and you're operating from a place of presence and intuitive response, it's not the same thing as like a survival instinct. Survival instinct is more of like, a program of needing to keep yourself alive. Internal authority is more of, I feel present and connected and aware of my situation and what's going on around me, and I feel that I'm in most alignment with this option. And to be able to choose from that place where you're taking all that energy into consideration, you can even take other people's perspectives into consideration. If especially if they're trying to wield some kind of external authority, and that's fine. That can all be part of their process, but knowing how to make that choice from the place that feels like that's what's best for you, that's moving forward with internal authority. And so what we're seeing in the world is that we've been operating in this form of external authority for so long that it's generated this general feeling of disempowerment. Like the president's supposed to be in charge of making the country run well, that the businesses and the people with money are supposed to make sure that everybody has all their needs met. We've outsourced these ideas of these structures, and because they're not in harmony and balance and they're not meeting our needs in a way where we feel empowered, it's becoming really easy to just blame those structures and blame those people and think that if we could just get the president out of power, if we could just change the economy to something better, that all of a sudden our own lives would be better. But what I feel like my message is that I'm here to share is that this isn't about trying to go out there and change the external reflection. It's about coming from the place of internal authority instead. It's almost as if, you see the pattern of the external authority and you realize where it's not working, and you may even feel the pressure to continue to make choices in that way, but to know enough about yourself and be connected and present enough with yourself to be able to choose, this is what I choose because it feels right to me. It doesn't need to make sense to you, and it may not be what anybody else agrees with, but this is what feels like the right thing. It keeps me in harmony and balance with myself. And that is how we're going to start to work with these energies as they're coming through into the new year, is that we begin to bring a creative response, an inspired response, and the power of our presence and of our free will and our choice, because it's as if we're invoking the power of our spirit and our creativity through our choices when we come from a place where we make those choices and then show what it's like to demonstrate internal authority. And so I think we're going to see kind of a push and a pull in the world, where people who are still latching onto these forms of external authority and trying to correct that in some way versus the people who really understand this is about coming from a place of internal authority and start demonstrating what that looks like in the world. And we may see both of that play out, and it may get stronger, and that conversation may get louder. Another way of looking at it, I was shown, is looking at the idea of rebellion versus revolution. So when you look at rebellion, and this is when, you feel that the external authority structure doesn't work for you, something feels out of balance. When you rebel against something, there's like a resistance where you're pushing against it, where this is what one side wants and this is what you want, and they say do this and you just say no, I'm not going to do that. And it kind of creates a battle between the polarity. It creates a conflict. And not to say that this doesn't have its place as well, but just to highlight the energy that it gets stuck. It can't really go anywhere because it's just one force pushing one way and one force pushing the other way. But revolution, when you look at that energy, and revolution has the word evolution in it. And when I was shown how to understand revolution, the essence of it, it's recognizing how all challenges that turn up basically require adaptive change. And so this happens even like in the seasons, right? When the fall comes and it starts to get colder, that the trees will drop their leaves. It's an adaptive response to the influence and the challenge that the temperatures are not ideal for it to flourish in the same way. And so that's an adaptive change that we call evolution. It's a shift or a way to maintain harmony even when the energies are changing. And when you think about even revolution as being a cycle, you make a revolution around the sun, or you make a revolution in a circular way, this starts to demonstrate what this energy does. There are adaptive changes that are meant to allow the energy to flow and respond to the challenging or changing influences that are happening in the environment. And so this is where I think this really highlights this energy as we move forward. If we're in rebellion, if we're in resistance, if we're in pushing back, we'll just get more of that, more feeling of being stuck, more feeling of hitting an opposition. They think they're right, you think you're right. But if we embrace the energy of revolution, which is where I believe internal authority is guiding us, the inner voice is guiding, that this is where the movement and change can happen. This is the adaptive change that can happen to respond to this. And it can be moment to moment, situation to situation. You don't really need to know ahead of time what to do, but when you're present with your intuition, and those responsive changes will come through your choices naturally. And that creates a flow where the energy will flow, it will move, it will change, and it will move this energy forward in an adaptive and evolutionary way. And I think that's what this year is meant to really maybe show us, is the difference between if we're coming at it from a rebellious energy of being stuck and polarized, or if we're coming at it from the inspired place of inner authority, which is meant to flow the energy, evolve us, and create this revolution of how to move through changes and create adaptive changes to the way that the environment is shifting around us and within us. So that was kind of what I felt in a very strong way. This energy came up in my own life and had to work through, finding where that inner authority was, watching myself and where I was rebelling, and then ultimately looking always to see where the path of least resistance is and where I can feel like I'm moving forward. Because when you feel like you're moving forward, that's when you feel the resistance drop. The point of the resistance, and this is all triggers, all emotional responses, all blame, judgment, shaming, criticism, all of that is the sign of resistance. The resistance is the signal that you're not in touch fully with your inner authority, and you're not finding the flow of the revolutionary energy that's available. And so that's, I think, the clear indicator that when we're in trigger, when we're in resistance, not to even judge ourselves or to consider that we're doing anything wrong, but to use that information to just feel where that resistance is and ask the question, how can I release this resistance and find a way to move forward that feels like it flows? And I feel like that's the nature, again, of all challenge, is it's built to have an adaptive and creative response. I really feel like one of the greatest the greatest truths about humanity and reincarnation and why we keep coming back is that if we were just to stay in spirit in ultimate peace and love all the time, we wouldn't change so much. Like, we come into challenging situations because it tests our capacity to invoke creative adaptive change, and then when we make those changes in ourselves and our consciousness, they continue forward in our evolution and lifetime to lifetime. And I think our soul is kind of in the business of, you know, how much it can challenge itself to change in certain ways because it understands what the payoff is of that, and the inevitability of it ultimately. That staying in one place and not changing leads to a kind of stagnation that is just not very exciting or very fulfilling at some point. So I try to view all these challenges and changes, and believe me, I feel it in the collective, and going through it my own way and seeing people going through it in their own way. It's a big energy of change, and there's a lot of reasons to feel that you really just wouldn't want to have anything to do with this, and it'd be better to opt out, or this isn't a good place to be. But I'm here to try to bring the perspective of the soul, which is that every challenge, every change has a creative, adaptive solution. And when we step into that, connect to that on our own, in our own inner way, it feels very exciting. It sweeps us up in that flow, and it helps us to move forward. Okay, so now we'll take a look at the tarot and see what kind of deeper reflections may come up here. All right, we have Jupiter in Scorpio with manipulation. We have bring love into the situation, new moon in Aquarius. We have wait, it is not time yet, things are being woven. And generativity. Generativity. I like that. Okay, so what I'm feeling from this overall energy is that, yeah, again, it's kind of like when you look at the word manipulation, you can take that in a positive or a negative context, right? If you say, like, oh, I'm being manipulated by these people, places, or situations, that's a negative connotation. But if you were to say, I'm making effective changes that is participating in the shift and the evolution in my own life, that is also a manipulation. And so I think what's being highlighted here is that, the understanding of how we relate to the word manipulation is going to give us a bit of a reflection of how we relate with authority. Because if we really feel like we're being manipulated externally by other people and institutions, that is a reflection that we're battling and we're rebelling and in resistance to the changing energies. And we're just kind of pointing the finger at the other side of the fence and saying, oh, it's their fault that I feel this way. And it's really just kind of it's a way of making excuses for not tapping into your own inner potential of creativity and be able to change the situation on your own. And so to understand that this is part of the game, okay, is that everything does appear as that it's somebody else's fault, or that it's the situation or circumstance that's making it this way. I've gone through vast amounts of lessons around, conspiracy theories and the shadow government, and understanding kind of the dark underbelly of the way all of that appears within this reality. And I'm not discounting that it does appear that way, but what I've come to find is that was all just me looking at it on the surface, and it just looked that way on the outside because I wasn't able to step into my inner authority yet and take that creative power to make changes for myself. And it just was easier to think that it was the outside trying to stop me from moving forward, rather than it was me not knowing how to move forward. I wasn't as deeply connected to myself yet. So I think when we have this generativity here, is that we're generating this connection with ourselves because we're going through the kind of challenges and changes that we're seeing. Um, where it's almost like a buildup, like a charge of energy that's happening in our system. And because it says, wait, it's not time yet, things are being woven, it really feels like we're just kind of using all this input and data from our reality to build that charge. And that's why I think it's so important to understand the difference between external authority and internal authority, and how we feel connected with our personal power, being able to step into these changes intentionally. This energy and potential is building up now. Well, it's setting the stage as these changes will roll out, and eventually we'll begin to kind of, again, take action on those adaptive changes when we feel that we're in charge of controlling that. But also, this bring love into the situation is the compassionate element. And when I rolled the astro dice, I got Sun in Cancer in the 6th house, and so there's definitely an element of care, compassion, that the light, and meaning the light of our soul, the light of source, the light of the universe, however you want to use it, is meant to be compassionate as it understands we're working through something really challenging collectively right now. So even though I try to bring through these messages to clearly delineate that we've been on a path and a road of disempowerment, and we're waking up to a different choice, that which is of more personal empowerment, that transition happens different for everybody. And the key is holding space and compassion and love, not only for everyone else as they make this transition, but for ourselves, because we're still going through levels of evolution that we don't know yet. And we don't know what we don't know. And so I just feel like there's so much changing. There's so much bubbling up under the surface. This definitely has to do with healing. This definitely has to do with, I like to think that the essence of the 6th house is it takes where your greatest challenges are that require the most attention around healing and creating structures for that healing to happen. But then those parts of you that learn through that process then become in service to the collective, because if you know how to make a change in yourself and you've shifted some energies to come into balance, you become the example of what that's like for other people that are going through it. So this really feels like a time of like for everybody to go in, see where you're at with this process of whether you're pushing against and rebelling or whether you're stepping into inner authority and understanding how to flow, and then know that these challenges that we've been through have meant to bolster us and expand our capacity to hold more space for others as they go through it. It's not enough just to say, well, I've healed this and I'm moving forward and kind of screw everybody else. Like, that's not it. It's that I came here as a, as an example, as an intention to heal these misaligned energies within the collective of the whole human consciousness, and then show up and offer that back in service and in love and in compassion. So again, no matter where you're at in the process, I think now is just a time to like get clear about the lines that are being drawn, and how we're getting ready to move forward with love and with creative, adaptive inspiration. Okay, so we're going to do a quantum crossing reading to look at the energies. We'll look at the past energies. We have the Knight of Pentacles, 4 of Pentacles, 3 of Wands. Okay, so this energy in the past has definitely been preparation. There's preparation. There's also this element of working together and connecting with others that you feel are on the same wavelength. But it's really been kind of like, let's lay the foundation. Let's connect to the people we need to connect to. Let's get grounded. Let's feel like we're stable and centered. Like I said, this whole thing about inner authority, it hinges on the central nervous system, because when our central nervous system becomes dysregulated, we aren't grounded and centered enough to let that inner authority speak clearly. And that's when oftentimes we're embroiled in this kind of rebellion and conflict with the external authority and feeling very disempowered. Our central nervous system is not running smoothly. And so when we're in that place, we can't even hear the truth of the inner authority, let alone to come forward with that, with confidence and a sense of personal power. So I feel like this kind of this past energy is really about each of us doing whatever you need to do to get grounded, feel connected to who you need to feel connected to, know what practices help you regulate your central nervous system, what's healthy for your body, what diet works best for you, kind of like putting all those little support components in place so that you can be grounded, have a regulated nervous system, and be really clear to be connected to that inner authority so that when the energy spikes, like it did over the weekend, that inner authority won't get overridden by the intensity of the energy when it pushes through and it wants to change. Because that's what I felt like. I'd come from a place where I was feeling very grounded, very peaceful, very centered, and that energy came through and it just like welled up, and it was like, boom, there's this here and it needs to be dealt with now. And I can see how my past self, and maybe wasn't as grounded and centered and clear, would have been more caught up in the battle and the rebellion when that energy got so intense because it was very ungrounding. But I felt like I was able to handle the intensity of that energy that came through, but also maintain the connection to the inner authority so that I could take action and express what needed to be expressed. And when I simultaneously, I expressed what needed to be expressed, and then I made my peace with the situation so that no matter how it turned out, I was going to be fine with it. That was kind of the strategy that I used when I moved through it, was that I knew what was important to me. It was vital for me to express who I am and what do I prefer, and then let that out and let it, be seen and heard, and then just make my peace with however that lands, however other people think about it, whatever situation needs to change. Like, I can hold space for all eventualities in this because I am being myself as much as I can and expressing what I need to express. And when I did those two things in that moment, in that time of intensity, the energy immediately dissipated and I was able to self-regulate again. So just sharing a little bit how that process worked for me. Okay, so here we have, these are the present energies. Present energies. We have the Seven of Swords, we have Judgment, and the Two of Wands. Okay. So, yeah, there was a similar message that came up in one of my previous readings like this. There's always multiple paths. And I say that at the beginning of every video because we literally exist as a quantum field of probabilities. So at any given time, there's just a number of different probabilities that exist for us to experience. And that the game of life is to use whatever level of awareness and consciousness and presence in the moment to shift into the most beneficial and harmonious set of potentials that you have access to. And we don't always get it right, but that's the game. You just keep trying and refine the process. And so when I look at this present energy, there's two very distinct probabilities. Not that there's more, but they're kind of in two camps. There's one where this is you expressing yourself, being authentic, being true to yourself, doing what feels like an absolute yes. And then there's a set of probabilities which are not really what you want to do, not really that exciting, but they have the distinct marker that it's good for somebody else, or this is what somebody else needs or wants, or this is what they say you should do. That's highlighting this split between the reflections of external authority. And there's a lot of programming. Like I said, we've all grown up with external authority and indoctrinated it in a society of external authority. We don't really know anything but constant external authority ever since we've come into this world. So there's a lot of programs that are still being run that have a strong gravity to pull and continue to open up those probable paths. And the thing is that we don't need to, but if we just default to our programming and our previous settings, we're just going to. Okay. And this is why a lot of people who maybe aren't satisfied with what they do for work, or they're just not happy with the world the way that it is, they don't necessarily see that they're being pulled into continual pathways and probability fields that would be more representative about what they think they have to do, what the world expects of them, rather than what they actually feel most inspired by, what they would choose to do if they knew they absolutely had the choice to do anything. And again, that's the game at this time, is getting more aware when we have choices in front of us, which one feels more exciting, which one feels more aligned with who I prefer to be. And if you feel that path, then you jump right into that path, and you're going to expand into that path, and there's no looking back. But if you feel you can't act on that, or you can't just jump into that path, it's usually because this gravity of this programming is still pulling the other way. And that's where it's just the recognition that we're in this in-between place of becoming aware that we're in control of shifting into these probable paths, whether they be the ones that we prefer or the ones that we don't prefer. And this is where the manipulation is. We are manipulating through our choices which series of probabilities that we shift into, when we're clear that it is a choice. Okay, so that's what I'm feeling about the present energy. Here we have the future energy. We have the moon. We have the strength. And the 5 of Cups. Okay. So, okay, this is interesting. So this energy, this has kind of a interesting feeling to it. This is kind of the feeling that, let's just say, what I was just talking about. We have these two probable paths that are available, and there's a strong gravity pulling us into this path of what we don't prefer, that we feel like we just have to do. But the choice is available to step into the path that we do prefer. It's almost as if moving forward, this future energy is saying, cultivate the strength to allow anyone to shift down that path of what they don't prefer. Even yourself, even to the point, if you find yourself shifting down that path of what you don't prefer, to cultivate the strength and the presence of compassion to allow that to happen. Because it really may feel like something's being lost. It may feel like something very deeply emotional or important is being lost. Almost as if it's being flushed away. It's being pulled down and out of this reality. Kind of getting the sense of like when something's being pulled down a vortex, being pulled down a drain. Like there is a certain energy that's being, let's just say, extracted from this dimension at this time. Like those lower frequencies of abusive external authority, that kind of overriding of free will, that energy is being pulled out of this reality. When you continually shift into your inner authority, it's a natural result that we're going to see that opposite external authority reflection is being removed. But the way that we see it being removed might be a bit disturbing, might feel like our hearts go out to those who are losing something. And it could be different for anybody, but if it seems like you're losing something, or if you see someone or something losing something, it would be wise to cultivate the strength of understanding that what they're actually losing is it's just harder to choose that set of potentials that they don't prefer. It's just getting harder for those set of potentials to have that kind of gravity. But in order to release that hold that trajectory has over the collective, there's going to feel like some people are going to lose some things, and you may feel like you're losing something. And this is, I think this energy is just here to say, just hold on to yourself and your connection to yourself, your inner authority, and know you always have the ability to stay present, to be as connected and peaceful as possible, and to make choices from that place of creative adaptability. Let's get it. Okay, let me get a couple clarifying cards on this one. Yeah, so this is, this is again, it's just kind of reinforcing um, a potential energy of lack, a potential energy of, um, of just like, if any of the changes feel cold or heartless, if any of the changes feel calculated or cutting, if any of the changes just feel like, I can't believe they would do that. I can't believe those people are losing that. And again, this is all reflections for you and your own journey. This is, I've said this before, but understanding how to hold space for the quantum field of all potential is to hold space to watch anything and everything happen, knowing you have ultimate choice to choose what you prefer, as long as you can allow everyone else to choose as well. So we're always going to see the full range of things that can happen. And this is, I get feeling this element of compassion, this element that came in during the full moon really strong, this higher level of feminine wisdom, which is to have compassion for those choosing what they're choosing, that you can hold space for those choices and focus on what you do have control over, focus on what is available for you. You always have that creative ability to move forward. Okay, so I'm gonna draw this. This card came out in the beginning, and then I'm gonna pull it out now. It says meditate and contemplate. So this goes right hand in hand with the weight, generativity. Um, it seems like reinforce, go within, forge your connection to yourself, generate this charge and this connection with yourself at this time. A couple more clarifying cards. Here we have the moon again and the Four of Wands. So this, when this energy down here is like, cultivate the strength to navigate the things that are going to feel changing and challenging, even if there feels like there's loss. This energy is focus on the things that remain and celebrate that what remains is actually so full of a new level of creation. Like we have aspiration. You know, when you think about aspiration, what you aspire to be, and this is what you aspire to be, but what we aspire to be as a human collective, there's this like polarity that's playing out between, like I said, that set of potentials of, let's call it the negative path, or the path that you wouldn't prefer, that and everything connected to the subconscious is kind of getting flushed out and pulled away. But what's replacing it is this whole part of the subconscious that's so excited that we can build this whole new reality. And recreation is so important. It goes hand in hand with revolution, because as these energies are changing and as we're flowing with adaptive changes, we're recreating. We have the creation and we recreate over and over again. So we're recreating the world in a new image of who we are when we are able to come from this place of inner authority. And it may be a little while we're still letting those old forces kind of reduce their gravity. Those old programs reduce their gravity. This is a recreation of our world. We're manipulating and choosing and doing this ourselves. And I also like how recreation is like recreation. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be what you do for the enjoyment of it. So I like that this came in, because the energy from the future felt kind of heavy. And then this kind of comes in to say, no, but there's actually so much creative potential and coming together here as well, and to focus on that. Okay, so the last card, this is from the Shaman's Dream Oracle. We have Fortune's Wheel, Luck and Right Timing. I'm going to read from the book on this one. 23. The fortune's wheel is a sign that luck has found the right timing in your life. You have the magic touch and everything turns to gold. There's nothing you can do wrong. You only need to hold what you desire as your intention and it becomes true. Do not waste this power on trifling things. Dream big, for surely this opportune moment will pass. Such is nature of fortune's wheel. Use the creative power of fortune's wheel for the benefit of others, and the gifts will be returned to you tenfold. Use it for only your own gain, and you will be left impoverished with the bitter taste of squandered opportunity. Fortune's wheel comes unannounced. Notice the early signs, the coincidental encounters, and seemingly magical and synchronous events that herald its arrival. That call, that email, that invitation, that chance encounter was no accident. They were all choreographed by fortune. Do not wait any longer. Carpe diem. Recall your boldest and noblest longing and invite it into your life. This invitation is all that is required. Yeah, so what I'm feeling is, and this, this is kind of what I was talking about with the sixth house being about healing, and kind of where we go through things that are really challenging, but then it turns into a service. It turns into something that we can contribute back. I really feel how when we're coming from that place of inner authority and we're really acting on what feels most exciting to us, and we're choosing those sets of potentials that is what we prefer, it's just built in that the harmonizing, expanding, loving force of the universe is woven into those choices. It's a service that's naturally just a part of those choices. And so this is how, when you have your biggest dreams and your biggest aspirations and what it is that you want to do and be in the world, that when you're in alignment with that true inner authority, it's just naturally built in that that's meant to benefit everybody else. That's all meant to be part of the service that you've woven from your own challenges and your own evolution and your own changes over time, that's culminating in this push. It's like a benevolent, positive energy that's wanting to push itself through your being and out into this world. And to me, there isn't such a thing as actual luck. There's just that harmonizing, benevolent force that exists and creates everything to operate as an orchestration. And so, I think how this reading's shaping up is it's just this time, even though it does seem to say meditate, wait, generate this connection with yourself, understand where you stand in relationship to authority, to cultivate that understanding of what that inner authority is guiding us to do. It's guiding us to push this positive expression out through our being. And that's what it's time for. This 2026 seems to be the marker point of the beginning of it's time to give birth to this benevolent, positive, harmonious energy in the world. Even though there's so many ways the world still seems opposite than that, we're just seeing the highlighting of everything on that level that's still being flushed out and still falling away, because there's still a hold there. There's still a gravity there. There's still people that are choosing that. And that's okay. This is a process, and it takes time. It's meant to be fun. But no, it is meant for you to bring that version of yourself that feels most empowered, most creative, that can take on anything, the adaptive potential of let's just show up, and I know that I can find a way of moving forward in this energy. That's where this is going. So that's all I have for today. Again, please like and subscribe. If you'd like to support the channel, there's links in the description box. And if you'd like to reach out to me for a personal reading, I put my email in there too. Okay, we'll see you next time.